with a colonial mindset. You know, she wasn't like the Bada Mem Saab. She came to really find out about India, to enjoy India, to experience India. The ideal of racism was so strong that there was an actual geographical line dividing the British and the Indians, the civil lines. So they for the British, the the whole idea of the difference in races, that East and West can never meet, you know, East is East and West is West, and neither the twain can meet. This idea was so deeply rooted that not only in the British community but even the Indian community, so that there was this distinct uh, difference between the two, and they never could imagine a meaningful coming together of the two races. India as inherently assimilative. It is a country in which many races, many cultures, many peoples have come and gone and left something of themselves behind. Many of them have stayed. But somewhere down the line, something or the other has been absorbed. Something or the other has come into what we call Indian, what we denote as Indian. And that Indian is not just one particular strand. It's not only the people, the Indo Europeans who came from India and settled by the banks of the Sindhu, but there are many elements that have gone into the making of India. And this, I think, in Heat and Dust, she gives a clear recognition of this fact, and or vision that filled her eyes all those years and suffused her soul. If this isn't affirmation of India, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what is. Thank you.
Professor Shah is part of that very rare breed of people who make their living by teaching English but write in other languages. So he is a professor of English, but he's written most of his work in Hindi, and he's a novelist, he's a poet, he's a storyteller, and above all, a friend of Ruth Jhabwala.
There is a well-known saying of Tagore, truth feels right, truth feels tight and uncomfortable in any dress. But in fiction, she moves easily. That is, if you want to discover and tell the whole truth about the life you have lived, you have to find a fictional route to it. The experience of revisiting the fictional world of Ruth Pravar Jhabwala is the experience of replicating the contours of a lifelong search, attempting to equate it with the yearnings of some of her characters, particularly of those to be found in My Nine Lives. The central character of the first chapter, called Life, has gone back to live in India where she had lived 40 years ago. She says, I had gone to Delhi then to pursue a research project about a woman poet with her search for the lover, the friend. Now, an old woman, this central character, or I, goes to Nizamuddin to listen to the Sufi singers or to the river where old women sing to a different god. At the end of this story, she says, these songs sound like the cry of anguish, of desperate love. Considering the fact that Ruth's writings also reflect what Henry James called the enormous lap of the actual, there is always the risk of appearing simplistic. Let us recall the second story or chapter of Nine Lives, where the central character this time is not a researcher, but a fiction writer like Ruth herself. She concludes that story thus: my novels and stories are mostly about the relations between men and women, which appears to have been the subject that has impressed itself most deeply on my heart and mind. I keep coming back to it, trying again and again to render my mother's and my aunt's experience as I observe it and my own. This is one more such attempt. His vocation now is rather to justify the ways of men and women to the only God accessible now to you, your own self with a capital S. That is the one who bears witness to all your actions and thoughts. This self includes the others by its very character of a witness and spectator. Now one has to experiment and innovate, even in finding a fictional route, to discover the truth about the life one has actually lived and observed. This must have been the motivation behind My Nine Lives, with its subtitle Chapters of a Possible Past. There is certainly no indulgence in mere might have beens. As the author's apologia makes it very clear, these chapters are potentially autobiographical. Even when something didn't actually happen to me, it might have done so. Every situation was one I could have been in myself, and sometimes, to some extent, was. The question that arises automatically in one's mind is why? Why, after a lifetime of making truth move easily in fiction, writers should still feel unrelieved and unperched? Ruth's case seems to be different from modern exemplars like Joyce or Hemingway. There is a Central European background, there is the early formative influence of England, and then there are those years of living in India. So altogether it's an amalgam and not a unitextured fabric. Although I soon felt at home, she says, although I soon felt at home wherever I happened to be, at the same time I held back from being truly assimilated. This is very crucial. Although I soon felt at home wherever I happened to be, at the same time I held back from being truly assimilated. She tells us in the Apologia to My Nine Lives. It was, further she says, it was as though I wanted to feel exiled from some other place and to be free to go back to or in search of it. She further tells us, but then these quests turned out to be not for a place after all, but always for a person. Who is this person? To quote her again, this may have been a person I have looked up to or been in love with, maybe even for some sort of guru or guide, someone better, stronger, wiser, altogether other. Then she is led to ask that overwhelming question: does such a person exist? Does such a person exist? And if so, does one ever find him? So this is the quest, the primary as well as the ultimate quest that appears to have informed and dominated the life as well as the work of Ruth Praur Jhabwala. This is what appears to justify and vindicate both, in spite of, in spite of the ever present and never to be resolved dilemma of human life and creativity, so aptly, so resoundingly expressed by the poet W.B. Yeats. I quote those two lines of Yeats. The intellect of man is forced to choose perfection of the life or of the